but it's also a description of reality. There's no question people are shrugging in a sense already. If they're going to regulate us and they're going to tax us as much as they do, there are people who are not doing what they would otherwise. There are people who are producing less. There are people who are working fewer hours. People, to some extent, shrug when they're placed in that circumstances. And I think it is a description, when things get really bad, and that is when you can't fight it. And it's a description when you have somewhere to go. And the problem is that the real liberative device is called culture, which doesn't exist, by the way. So you shrug and you go on strike, and what do? The nice thing about that shrug is you go to a valley and you fight to come back. And so it's much more complicated than what we live in. And I think that decision that individuals are making every day about how much to work and what to do is becoming more and more difficult.
I'll talk about this maybe from a personal level. I don't recommend that people shrug except under certain kinds of circumstances. I think to some degree, maybe I shrug. I worked for BT 38 years and CEA 20 years. I'm fairly convinced, however, I did retire at 60. I'm fairly convinced if we had not had the regulatory environment we were in, going through Sarbanes-Oxley, going through TARP more recently, if we just run our business, I'd probably still be running the business. I'm very excited about what I'm doing now, which is really trying to get after free markets and capitalism, both, and get involved in educational establishment. So maybe I didn't shrug in terms of not doing things, but I certainly changed what I was doing because of the environment. And I think we find a fair number of business people that get, and they may not even know consciously, that either work less, drive the business, they don't grow the business as much. See, this is the medical profession, spades now. Doctors, they quit early and do other things. So I think people end up shrugging in kind of interesting ways. And in my case, I'm fairly convinced that I shrug. Change direction, I think we're still active in a different way than I would have been if we had a different kind of economic environment, different kind of government system.
I was going to suggest Winston-Salem State University. I teach the course of the BUT, and I want to thank you, Mr. Allison, for providing us the funding for the various university programs. My question, though, is we were talking about healthcare, and we seem to be very concentrated on what's happening here in the United States. And I see it as an even bigger threat. I want you to comment on this, the carbon tax / carbon trading permit system. In fact, I dealt with a bunch of academics recently where I was trying to propose a free market solution which would allow the insurance industry to regulate and handle that. And instead, and I can't find any traction for it. Everyone's either for a carbon tax, or they're for the cap and trade, or they say, well, it doesn't exist. And I said, none of those three seem to be reasonable. What do you think?
I agree with you about the danger of cap and trade and about the danger of carbon tax. It potentially is the largest tax increase in American history. It would be devastating for us. It would be devastating from a competitive perspective. Nobody would want to do business in the United States. This is this idea that human-caused global warming is happening. The Earth is warming, and therefore we have to reduce our consumption of carbon. By the way, the only time you actually get your consumption of carbon down to zero is not just when you're dead, but when you're decayed. The actual process of decay produces CO2. So you have to be long gone to get your, what do they call it, carbon footprint to zero. And that tells you something. Anytime somebody's proposing something that the only way I can actually do perfectly is by dying, I'm suspicious of it. Right off the bat. So yes, I think it's one of the greatest threats, or maybe the greatest threat, maybe even greater in some senses than healthcare, that this administration, and by the way, this is backed by many Republicans, cap and trade. McCain ran on cap and trade as one of his campaign promises that he would pass something like this. My view of the whole issue of global warming is, I'm not a scientist, but as I said, I'm suspicious of any science that is there to show that I should be dead, that is how the world will be a better place. Or that the way to make the world a better place is to produce less, is to lower our standard of living, is to constrain. So I'm suspicious of the science to start off with. But let's grant them the science for a minute. Let's say the globe is warming, then there's the next step is, are we causing it? Which the science is very dubious with. But let's grant them that. Let's grant them that human beings are causing global warming, and it's the CO2 that we're putting out there that's causing it. What is the remedy? Is the remedy to stop industry and stop production, and stop consumption, and lower our standard of living, which would be devastating, and I think that's part of what they want. And think of it in this terms. I'd like to use this example. Imagine people talk about the third world and the impact global warming has on the third world, so let's take them on at their word. Imagine you're a native in Africa, in the middle of Africa, the temperature is 95 degrees, it's really, really hot, you have no air conditioning because there's no electricity in your village, right? And you have two options. You can keep the status quo, you have no electricity, and therefore keep your carbon footprint really, really low. And you'll always live with 95%, 95 temperatures and no air. Or you can build the electricity, the infrastructure, all of that. As a consequence of your human activity, the temperatures go up to 100, but now you have air conditioning. I take the air conditioning anything. Anything. And I think most human beings would. The solution to global anything is more freedom. The solution is more production, more wealth creation, so we can handle whatever nature throws our way. Look, there's going to be an ice age one day. There were ice ages thousands of years ago. There's going to be an ice age in the future. What are we going to do when an ice age comes? We're going to hunker down and pretend that we caused it and therefore stop living? No. We're going to develop technologies to make it possible for us to live during an ice age. We're going to change our environment to meet our needs, which is what human beings have done forever. It's only in modern times that the idea is, no, the way to solve problems is to stop progress. No, we need more progress. We need more freedom. We need more capitalism so we can deal with the problems that, why do we in America deal with hurricanes better than they do, in Burma, in Myanmar, these days, right? There hundreds of thousands die. I mean, with all the tragedy Katrina was, not that many people actually died in Katrina relative to what would have happened in the third. Why is that? Because we're industrialized, because we have technology, because we build stronger buildings, because we know how to deal with these things. We can bring food and supplies into these areas. They can't do that in Myanmar because they're still primitive. Do we want to go back to their states so that we can't deal with nature? Well, no. The whole idea of human progress is finding ways to deal with what nature throws our ways. So that's my answer. My answer is always, is there an insurance solution? Let the markets figure it out.